I had no certainty. I didn't need more motivation. I didn't even need to train harder. What I needed was certainty. And because of it, this actually kept me stuck for a long time. And whenever I would first work out, I would constantly ask myself, am I doing this right? Am I doing my exercises correctly? Am I actually following the proper split? And I would constantly judge myself and think, am I actually making progress, right? Because if I'm doing the exercises incorrectly, if I'm not following the most optimal split, then I'm just pretty much wasting my time. And I would constantly ask myself every few weeks, am I just wasting my time, right? Because if I'm not doing the best exercises, if I'm not doing the most optimal split, and if I'm not making gains quick enough, then I'm just wasting my time, right? I might as well just give up fitness and try something else. So what I would end up doing is I kept switching around my split and my exercises. And as a beginner, instead of just sticking to one routine, I would go ahead and switch around my routine. And when I first started working out, I was doing home workouts and I was following these follow along home workout videos. And instead of just sticking to them and actually just choosing them and just sticking to them and running it for weeks and months, I would constantly go ahead and switch around exercises, switch around routines. These are only two screenshots which I have of my old routines which I used to follow, but I promise you there were many of these routines which I don't have them saved anymore. So I was literally switching around my exercises and my routines every few weeks. And this led me to going ahead and just slowing down on my progress. And I would constantly ask myself, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to actually make progress? And because I was going ahead and switching around routines and switching around exercises, I didn't go ahead and actually progressively overload. So this led me to being in a plateau for a very long time. And I can tell my younger self right now, coming from somebody who's been training for years now, and I've made progress again in my fitness journey, I can say that I didn't need more motivation, okay? I didn't need even more discipline. What I needed was none of those things. What I needed most was just certainty. And now I can safely say that I can actually stick to a routine. I can stick to some exercises which I have in my routine. I don't need to go ahead and constantly routine hop and every few days go ahead and sit down and think, you know what, am I doing the routine which is the best for me? Am I doing the most best exercises, the most scientific exercises ever, right? And I would say that even if somebody is doing a mediocre routine, they're not doing the most optimal exercises for hypertrophy and all that type of stuff, right? If the person just goes ahead and stays consistent, he will go ahead and make gains. From my experience, I've seen people who just don't even do the most optimal routines, the most optimal exercises. They just constantly show up to the gym, they train hard, they leave, they come back week by week, and they actually make progress, because that is the most important thing. It doesn't matter what exercises you choose, okay? For example, this is a workout which I do every Wednesday, okay? So I follow a 3 times a week full body split, and each of my days when I'm in the gym, I do slightly different exercises than the day prior, okay? So I train all of my muscles, right? Doing a full body split. None of these exercises are probably the best which I should be doing, and I'm not going to go ahead and tell you that this is the routine which you should be following. What I'm trying to say is that I actually stick to this, okay? And I've been sticking to this for multiple weeks ever since I switched to full body, okay? I'm not saying this is the best, but what I'm saying is that I actually can stick to something, unlike prior when I would go ahead and switch around routines, switch around exercises, and I couldn't stick to just one thing. So in the long run, nothing would change. Nothing would change if you, for example, chose to do a cable curl instead of doing a normal dumbbell curl. And none of these tiny little switches in your routine, in your exercises, is going to make much of a difference, okay? Really, the exercises which are overthinking and thinking which exercise is better. Is it better to do a hack squat or is it better to do a leg press? This decision is literally so little, and it actually does so little to your future gains that it's not even going to do much, okay? Because in the long run, nothing would change if you decide to do this exercise or this exercise. As long as you are doing the exercise correctly and it doesn't give you any sort of joint pain or anything, then you're not going to go ahead and see anything bad if you decide this exercise over this one, okay? Because in the short term, you're going to think that, okay, I'm actually, making progress and stuff because, I chose this exercise because this exercise is actually more scientific than this exercise, right? But the truth is that despite whatever exercise, whatever split you choose, all of them can be good. The most important thing is that you actually can stick to it and stay consistent. Now, what should you do if you are struggling with this? What should you do if you had the same problem as me and you constantly switched around routines, switched around exercises? Like, what should you do? Okay, because I really know that not just me, but there are certain other people who struggle with the same thing, and you're struggling with the same thing as I'm assuming because you're watching this video. And what are some practical tips which you can follow to go ahead and stop this and actually stay consistent? What you need to do is you need to set this rule, or you need to set this challenge for yourself that for 90 days, you will not change your routine at all, okay? So if you started running a new split, a new workout routine, then you should run it for 90 days, not changing it whatsoever. It doesn't matter if it's one exercise, one compound movement, nothing, like absolutely nothing out of your routine should change. Nothing whatsoever. You're gonna be running this split, this routine for at least 90 days. And the good thing with running it for 90 days is that after the 90-day mark, you're gonna go ahead and see, am I actually making progress, okay? If you're making progress on a routine which you've run for 90 days or more, then keep it, right? Keep the routine which is actually giving you progress. But after 90 days, if you see that, okay, maybe this routine isn't for me, I'm not making so much progress, I don't really enjoy it, then you can go ahead and switch the routine. But you need to be running it for at least 90 days, okay? At least 90 days. And honestly, what you'll find is that once you go ahead and make this agreement to yourself and you say, okay, I'm not going to change my routine up until 90 days, for example, is that after a few days or even after a week, you'll just find yourself just thinking, okay, I don't need to switch around my exercises or my routine anymore. Because really, just like this little thing of wanting to switch around your routine and exercises is just a little dopamine trip, really, because you think that you're making progress. It gives you a false sense of progress just by going ahead and sitting down and analyzing your routine. And you think, oh yeah, if I do this exercise instead of this exercise, I'm just going to go ahead and suddenly make so much more gains, right? But that's not true. By sticking to your routine and exercises, you can go ahead and safely, progressively overload it. If you're not going ahead and staying consistent with your split, then it's very hard to see if you're actually making progress, right? What you need to do is just stick to one routine and follow it as best as you can, and you should be good. And that's it with the video. If you've enjoyed it, make sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for new uploads to come.